Come in, pull up a chair, and do not mind the ticking. When you cross into your late 60s and start down through your 70s, no one ever sits you down and tells you the honest truth about what changes. They will warn you about your pension and your blood pressure. They will warn you about the waiting rooms and the appointments. But hardly a soul tells you the quieter truth about the years between 65 and 75. My name is Henry. I am 75 years old, and I gave 50 years to a workbench in a thin little shop on the corner, handing this town back its time, one clock and one watch at a time. So let me pass on what these particular years have taught me. This is not the decade when living becomes impossible. I want that to be the first thing you hear. It is the decade when living becomes heavier. The small things, the plain, everyday things, the ones that never used to cost you a thought, they begin to ask something of you. A little more strength, a little more nerve, a little more patience. And when nobody warns you, you start blaming yourself for changes that are landing on nearly everyone your age. So I want to take you through 6 of them, not to scare you, just the opposite, so you can watch them come and meet each one standing on your own feet. The first is sameness, and this one is a thief in soft shoes. You never hear it cross the floor. Then one day you notice you have walked the same 3 streets for a year, eaten the same supper on the same evenings, settled into the same chair, while the nights blur together as if your life had been wound onto a loop. I know this one from the inside out. After Margaret passed, my days drew in very small. The same kettle at the same hour. The same stool, the same glass screwed into my eye, the same old wall clock ticking away that has hung in my shop since before I drew breath. At first it felt like comfort, familiar, safe. But after a time, something in it troubled me. My world had been shrinking, and it never once asked my leave. My mind had quit waking up. Nothing startled it any longer, so it gave up keeping the days at all. And here is something 50 years bent over gears taught me. The mechanism that never turns is the one that seizes solid. It is not the running that wears a clock down to nothing, it is the standing still. People imagine that keeping the mind sharp is puzzles and vitamins, fine things both. But what truly holds a mind awake is novelty, small surprises, a moment where your attention has to switch back on. One afternoon, I took a different way home, down a lane I had passed by for 30 years, and I came on a little square with a stone bench and an old man scattering crumbs to the pigeons from a paper bag. Nothing of any size happened there. Yet that night I could have described every corner of it to you, while most of my days had gone by smooth and blank. That is the work a new thing does. It wakes you up. So now I tell folk my own age, once a week, do one unfamiliar thing. Nothing grand. You need not climb a mountain at 73. Walk a street you do not know. Read a writer you never opened. Sit on the far bench instead of your own. The aging mind does not crave excitement half so much as it craves interrupting. Because when every day is a tracing of the one before, the mind quietly stops keeping any record at all. And that, my friend, is a thin way to grow old. The second is the one people are too ashamed to name out loud. Your circle draws in, not all at once, slowly, without a sound. First, you let the call go because you are tired. Then, you turn down the invitation because your own chair is the easier place to be. Then, a whole season slips by, and you notice the telephone has gone silent, and you sit there wondering where they all got to. But here is the piece nobody lays out plainly. More often than not, it was not the people who left you first. It was the wanting to reach for them that left first. The pull to turn toward others softens with the years, like a spring that has given up a little of its tension. That is what makes being alone so dangerous past 65. It is not only the quiet room. It is losing, by degrees, the very instinct to break the quiet. I will be straight with you. There were evenings after Margaret when I could hear the neighbours laughing on a porch down the way, and some part of me thought I ought to go down and join them. And then a smaller voice would murmur, "Maybe tomorrow." That one little phrase has robbed people of years. Maybe tomorrow. And tomorrow stretches into half a year. So listen, at our age, you do not need a crowd. You do not need a calendar full of names. You need plain, regular human contact, small and often. The woman behind the counter who knows your face. The neighbour who lifts a hand over his fence. The barber who asks how your week has gone. Those little exchanges count for far more than our pride will ever let us say. We are built for one another, clear to the last hour. And I learned this the hard way too. Being alone and being lonely are two different animals. Some mornings I take my coffee by the window, and the silence is rich and full and the best of company. That is solitude, and it feeds a man. But loneliness is hollow, and it leans its weight on you, as if the walls were easing inward an inch at a time. You have to learn to tell the two apart. One fills the spirit, the other slowly empties it. So, if you catch yourself having gone 2 or 3 days without a word to another living soul, do not let it pass. Do not sit waiting to feel like it. At our age, the doing has to come first, and the wanting catches you up afterward. Some days you have to get your coat on before the will to go has shown its face. And here is the strange part. Once you are through the door, the wanting comes up the road behind you. The third may be the hardest of the lot, because it makes straight for your pride. It is learning to be helped. Most of us were brought up to believe that strength meant shouldering it alone. We raised the children, paid the bills, worked at trades we did not love, buried our own mothers and fathers, and swallowed griefs that no one ever heard about. We grew very practiced at carrying weight without a sound. But somewhere past 70, life sets you a hard question. Can you let another person help you and not burn with shame over it? That does not come easy. I caught my heel on the step into my own shop one frozen morning and went down hard on the boards. Nothing broken, the Lord be thanked, but I sat there on that cold floor a good deal longer than I will own to, and my first thought was not to call a soul. My first thought was to make sure that nobody had seen me. Is that not a queer thing? Flat on the floor and still shielding everyone else from the plain truth of me. We do not want to be a weight on anyone. We do not want the children fretting. We do not want to be caught looking weak. But turning down help does not guard your dignity the way we like to pretend. Often it only delays the fall that ends you. I once knew a man named Gus, a proud old bricklayer, hard as the very walls he laid. He would not let a living soul carry his bags once his chest turned bad, would not so much as touch a cane, would not ask his own daughter to drive him to the doctor. "I am fine," he would tell you. "I am fine." You can guess how it finished. One bad fall, then the hospital, then a home, and the better part of his freedom gone within half a year, all because he would not take a small hand while the trouble was still small. That stayed with me a long while, and it brought me round to seeing it clearly. Asking for help in good time is not surrender. It is plain sense. Wise aging is not proving you can still manage every last thing on your own. It is hoarding your strength for the things that matter most. And here is one more piece, the one that took me longest to take in. The people who love you very often ache to help more than you will ever let them. When you wave off every offer, you tell yourself you are sparing them the bother. Half the time, you are only shutting them out of the loving of you. The fourth steals in so softly that you do not catch it until your world has already pulled in tighter. I call it the body's hesitation. Not weakness, not yet. Hesitation. The small pause before you push up out of the chair. The instant at the bottom of the stairs where you weigh up whether the climb is worth the making. The bag of shopping you carried with ease for 40 years that has somehow turned heavier than it has any right to be. The young suppose old age strikes like a bolt out of the sky. Mostly it rolls in like fog, slow, soft, almost courteous. I remember reaching up for a box on the high shelf at the back of the shop, a thing I had done 10,000 times, and for the first time in my life my arm put a question to me before it moved. Are we certain about this? That gave me a jolt, not because the shelf was beyond me, because the easy certainty had simply gone out of me. And here is what I want you to take in. A great many times it is not the body that lays down its tools first. It is the willingness. You skip one hard movement, then a second, then a third. And little by little, the body settles for a smaller life. That is how a man shrinks and never catches himself at it. He stops reaching high. He stops the long walk. He stops bending, stops lifting. And after enough months go by, the muscles take him at his word. I set out to fight it in very small ways. Nothing heroic about it. Each morning, I made myself walk a touch farther down the road than I had any wish to. Some mornings my knees complained the whole length of it. But the aim was never to turn athlete at 75. The aim was to keep up a conversation with my own body, to remind it that moving was still part of our bargain. And I will tell you what I found. An old body answers far better to steadiness than to force. You do not have to punish it. You have to keep telling it, quietly, day after day, we are still in this together. Because the hour the mind decides that moving no longer matters, the sliding speeds up in the dark, where your eye cannot follow it. The fifth is the one we almost never speak out loud. It is grief that never altogether leaves. By the time you are well into your 70s, near enough everyone is carrying people who are no longer here. A brother gone, a wife gone, old friends gone, and the places gone with them. The shops shut their doors, the streets are made over, the houses passed to strangers. Some days you go through a quarter of town you once knew by heart and feel like a guest wandering your own memory. That kind of grief is hard for the very reason that it no longer comes in a storm. It works itself into a plain, ordinary morning. You find you have set out 2 cups from old habit before you remember there is only the one of you now. A song drifts down from the speakers in a shop and your chest draws tight for 10 seconds, and then you go back to choosing your loaf as though not a thing had stirred. Young people think grief is a piece of work you finish. The old know otherwise. Grief does not end. It only changes its shape. It goes quieter, and it stays. I still catch my hand reaching for the telephone to call people who have been gone for years. Margaret has been gone a good while now, and there are mornings I wind the little clock she loved there on the mantel and talk to her the whole time, plain as you like. The heart keeps love far longer than it keeps the facts. And I have come to think one reason these years sit so heavy is that we are grieving almost without pause while making out that we are not. We grow terribly skilled at carrying sorrow behind a level face. But here is the thing that helped me. I stopped treating the grief as an enemy to be put down. I stopped asking, why can I not get past this? And I started asking instead, what if the remembering is a part of the loving? That turned everything around for me. To miss a person is to say plainly that they mattered. To feel the loss still is to say your own heart is beating yet. The danger is only when grief hardens into a bolted door, when a man quits living long before his living is actually done. So, if you have lost people, and I know full well that most of you have, hear me close. Do not build yourself a little shrine out of the pain and move into it for good. Carry them gently instead. Speak their names. Tell the old stories over. But keep on living too. Keep on laughing too. The ones we loved would not have us sitting in a darkened room waiting our turn to follow them down. Life is still asking something of us while we are here to give it. And now the sixth, which may run deepest of them all. It is purpose, once the old name you went by has worn clean off. This one falls hardest on the good, hard-working sort. For 50 years you knew exactly who you were, because somebody had need of you. You were the provider, the mother, the foreman, the one who put things right. Every morning arrived with its orders already pinned to its front. Then one day the children are grown and scattered. The work is behind you, the calendar thins out to nothing, and you wake to a question that can knock the legs from under a strong man. Who am I now? A great many people slide into a low, quiet dark in these years and never once see that this is the real wound lying under all the others. It is not simply the aging, it is the loss of the part you spent a life playing. I went through it myself when I finally eased off the shop. For the best part of a year, I carried on like a man on one long holiday. But a holiday turns hollow if there is nothing deeper holding it up. I remember sitting in the front room one grey afternoon and thinking, nobody truly has need of me today. Say a sentence of that kind to yourself often enough, and it can do a man genuine harm. But these years taught me a good thing as well. Perhaps the last stretch of a life is not about being wanted by the world every waking minute. Perhaps it is about finally being introduced to the man who stood underneath all those parts you played for half a century. That takes time, and it takes honesty, and most of us are short on both. But sit still long enough, and you start to turn up what still brings you alive. Not what makes you useful, what makes you feel awake. For me, oddly enough, it came back round to the work itself, though on wholly new terms. I mend one clock now, not for the coin of it, but for the small, clean gladness of setting a stopped thing ticking again. I keep the whole day clear for my granddaughter when she comes, and I bring her nothing at all but myself. I helped a lonely neighbour put his late father's watch right, and I watched his face the moment it started, and that was worth more to me than a year of good wages. The world drills the young to build themselves out of all they achieve. Old age teaches a wholly different lesson. It teaches you to be somebody through presence, through paying attention, through prizing what is still here, instead of only mourning what has gone. And after the whole of it, here is what I have come round to believing. The people who grow old with the most peace in them are not the healthiest, and they are not the richest. They are the ones who learn to go soft without ever giving up. They quit fighting the morning the instant their eyes come open. They bend. They grow gentler with themselves. They stop weighing their worth by speed and by usefulness and by standing on their own two legs with nobody's hand near them. They learn to take their joy in smaller cups. A warm drink, a grandchild's voice on the line, light falling sideways through a kitchen window, a slow walk as the day draws down. These sound like next to nothing when you are young. Further along the road, they turn out to be the whole of it. So if you find yourself somewhere between 65 and 75, or further along than that, I want you to hold to one thing before we part. You are not failing because the days have turned heavier. You are carrying a mind and a body that simply ask for more care and more intention than once they did. That is not weakness. That is only being a person who has lived a good while. And for all these years take from us, there is real beauty waiting for you still. There is curiosity left. There is company left. There is laughter left. There is a reason to rise in the morning left. Maybe not in the loud, hungry fashion the world cheers for when we are young, in a quieter and a truer fashion. Thank you for sitting a while with me. I mean that with my whole heart. If anything here has stayed with you, hold to it through this week. Take the walk. Make the call. Try the one new thing. Let somebody help you. Be a shade kinder to yourself than you were the day before. We have all come a long road to reach here. Mind yourself out there.